How's this look? All right, we got two people waiting, so I have somebody to talk to here. I'd like to welcome you to Baker's Green Acres. I'm Mark, your host, and this is going to be our weekly question and answer session. We call it Anyone Can Farm, and one person even kicked off. I guess they thought that Jill was going to be here or something. Gay talk away, missed you guys later week. Hey, okay. Something about gay. All right, I'm Mark, your host, and I know we're going to have some new people here, and I know that this is going to get listened to a few times because this is recorded, and some of the conversation here tonight might be the type of conversation that you want to listen to. So a little bit about what this is about is we're an 80-acre farm. We're in Marion, Michigan, and we do beef, pork, chicken, produce. We do a lot of butchering, and we're just all around good guys. We fix our own stuff. We like to discover. We like to challenge. We like to, I don't know, just have an intentional lifestyle. We grow our own food, butcher our own meat, and make our own fun, basically, is what we do. I've got a big family. My wife and I have 8 children, and we still have about 4 of them home. And this is where we live, this is where we play, and we enjoy ourselves quite a bit. The nature of this question and answer is because we've been farming for a lot of years now, and I also make videos about how we do what we do. And people watch them, and then they like to call me during the day and ask me questions. And I found that that's a lot of fun, but it's not real productive. And I stop and I talk for an hour to somebody. I don't mind doing that. I think it's productive for the public, but it's not real productive for me because it takes me away from what I'm doing. And I think it's a valuable service to do. So we started off by dedicating 2 hours a week, one Wednesday night at 7 and one Saturday morning at 10, was it? And we do a Q&A, and it was a lot of fun. It was productive. The one on Saturday had to go because it was shooting a hole in our morning, and that's pretty critical time for us actually on Saturdays. So we had to let that one go for the summer. Now in the wintertime it's going to be different because when we have 3 feet of snow, there's not a lot going on Saturdays, not as much as in the summertime. So maybe we'll revisit that, but I don't know at this point. But the Wednesday night is good because 7 o'clock, that's when we can stop work. And this platform is outstanding because we don't have to drive any place. We don't have to, nobody that wants to listen to this has to drive any place. It doesn't cost anybody anything. It's just sitting down for an hour or so and having a conversation at my kitchen table. As you can see, we're not at my kitchen table right now. The reason for that is it was cold enough this morning, May 22nd, where the water froze and outside the waterers for our chickens, that froze, and we had to have the wood stove going in the house. So the house is pretty warm. It warmed up this afternoon, and it's actually pretty nice outside, and we've been working on some projects here, and but it's too warm in the house to do this, but it's windy outside, so it's too windy to do it outside. So here we are. This is our back room, our utility room that we've been working on this winter, and hope to have it finished here soon. This is a room where we're hopefully going to have a couple of our freezers for the house, and put a floor in here so we can keep firewood back here. And it was already here. We're just finishing off the inside of it. So that's the nature of this program, and I think we've focused on subjects that have to do with small farms and homesteading. By the way, we define homesteading as anything that you do to feed yourself. Right? So if you're growing some some protein, let's say you're doing some rabbits or some chickens, and then you're doing some carbohydrates like you're growing some stuff out in your garden, that's for your home. So you're homesteading. All right. This is not in any way meant specifically for the commercial farmer, somebody that's going to farm and their bottom line is in dollars and cents. We've been there. We did it for a lot of years, over 10, and we're not there anymore. This way, my market is sitting right there. It's the keeper of the children and the cook for this homestead. We have people here to eat quite a bit, and we have a lot of kids to feed, so I've got a really good market here once I'm feeding my kids, right? And then, of course, we'll do business with our friends and some of our neighbors, not very many. And yeah, that's our market right there, and it's really good. If we choose to go commercial and you want to sell into restaurants and you want to sell into retail stores and things like that, well then you're going to have to partner with a couple of other agencies here in the state. One is Department of Agriculture, and then probably the health department or wherever you're selling your product into, and that's where it gets no fun because they're not very good partners on this, and they take a nice chunk out of your action. And plus, we find that those markets are not near as good as these markets because those markets they have to keep their price point low as possible, and they can always get their food from Food Service of America or Gordon Foods or anything like that. And those guys move a lot of material from industrial agriculture, which grows food very cheaply, and we really can't compete with them, and we don't wish to because we don't want our food to be cheap. We want our food to be nutrient dense and humanely raised. We want our animals taken care of and have a decent life. So we've chosen the homestead model, and I think it's a great model. And so these are the things that we want to share tonight. We want to dedicate some time to the situation that's going on down in Muskegon County, more specifically the Dalton Township. And if you don't know about this, I will just fill you in a little bit, and I would encourage you to listen up here because at this point it's not you, but it could be, right? So this happens to be a situation that's going on with two people down there that are running a farm. The name of the farm is Hidden Creek Farm. The people's names are Crystal and Lee. Lee Witt and Crystal Brummins, and they are husband and wife, and they're in their mid to late 20s, I believe, right? Got a call a couple weeks ago. Well, would it have been last week? Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and it was that there was they were having problems with the township. All right, so the township is the smallest unit of government that we deal with. You have township, and then you have county, so you have maybe 10 or 15 townships within a county, and then the counties, there's 83 counties within the state. And I'm in Michigan, it differs all over the place. But the township here, Dalton Township, seems to have overstepped their bounds. They don't think they did. And let me tell you what happened. So, Hidden Creek Farm has been operating for 5 years. Jill and I went down there and we looked it over. It was very picturesque. It was put together very well, very well. A lot of care and time went into making that, so it was a beautiful place to go. 18-acre farm. You go down the driveway. You can go to the Hidden Creek Facebook page and you can take a virtual tour. And that is what I saw when I pulled in the driveway. And then we got out and we walked around. I saw the condition of their animals. I saw the condition of their flower beds and their vegetable beds. They weren't planted yet. This was 10 days ago or so. The trees were budding, so that's what I smelled. I could smell springtime. They had probably 15 or 20 pigs in probably about an acre pasture, so they were not very close together at all. I smelled I detected no odor of manure at all. They had probably 6 to 8 chicken tractors, maybe more, maybe less, I'm not sure, I didn't count them. Well built, well maintained, probably 40 chickens in each one, and you could tell they're moving them daily or every other day. So the manure was not building up there at all. The animals were very healthy. I was impressed, all right, and I'm not easily impressed when I go to homesteads, but I was impressed with this. It seemed like they follow the same people that I follow as far as how to set your farm up, right? So I was impressed. And plus I'm impressed with the two of them. They could be doing a lot of things with their lives, but they've chosen to do along the lines of what I do. So I'm impressed with that. So here's how it went down. They have a neighbor, and the neighbor got irritated with a plant sale that they had. The plant sale, I'm told, lasted, and this is from them, lasted two hours, maybe 2.5 hours, and they sold out of their plants. People, instead of pulling in the driveway, some of the people parked on the road, like they do with yard sales and stuff like that. Not everybody did. Most people did pull in, but some people parked on the road, and the neighbor didn't like that. So the neighbor went to the township and complained. He complained to a guy by the name of Tony Barnes, who would be the township supervisor. All right, the township supervisor said, there's not much I can do about that. People can have a yard sale if they want. They can have a plant sale if they want. It says the United States of America. They don't have to get a permission for everything. But then he says, oh, yeah, but they don't have a special use permit from us. So the neighbor decided, well, I'm going to sue him, pain and suffering, and he sued him for $75,000, pain and suffering, and wants them to shut down their operation. It's what they do to make a living. Lee works out, he's a machinist, and Crystal takes care of the farm. Lee eventually would like to just come home and be a full-time farmer. That a lot of people want to do that, but when you start out, that's not the way it works. Let's see, what do they do there? They have pigs, chickens, produce, cut flowers. They have a herd of goats that they milk, and so they milk shares with the goats. And they have looks like a little storage room, little store. People can go in and take their stuff, honor system, and leave. The people that patronize the farm are members of the farm, so it's not like you can just come off the street and you don't have to know where you're going there. So it's a members only kind of deal. If you show up there and you want to become a member, you can become a member right then. You have to talk with the owners, So where was I? So anyway, the neighbor did sue him, and then the township sued him. Here's why the township sued him, and I put him down, okay? It's kind of a play on words. I did speak to the township supervisor. I've spoken to him 3 different phone calls now. The first one, he called me Thursday, and was kind of upset that I made a video. Leadership on this, which I am still pointing the finger at. They're way out of line. But during the conversation, I found out quite a few things. Really what this came down to was the township realized that the farm leadership, according to their leadership, if you want to have a sale on your farm or on your property, you got to go to them and say, can I? And they'll say, Well, yeah, but the special land use permit is $50, and we can say no, and you don't get your $50 back. So to get permission in this township, you got to pay them $50 to do something on your own property. And Crystal was in there, and she said something doesn't seem right here. Uh, I own this property. This is my business. This is my farm. I don't think I should be asking you for permission for anything. So no, thank you. I'm going to have my sale anyway, right? I would have done the same thing. You know, you know. So the township, this is what they do. Here's their coercion method. What they do is they have a lawyer on retainer. The lawyer wrote up a document to sue them. I don't have it handy here. It's on my desk down in the office. I kind of do. I'd like to show these guys right on my desk. And it seeks to shut the farm down. It seeks an injunction against a Mother's Day plant sale that they were going to have. And the judge granted the Mother's Day injunction. They weren't able to have their plant sale, which I thought was pretty crummy, you know. I mean, it's what they do. They're not hurting anybody. And then the lawsuit from the township supervisor maintains up and down that it's a safety issue, that many cars on the street is a safety issue, and that if they had only gotten a land use permit, then the township could have briefed them on safety measures that would have made it much more safe, plus $50. I don't know about that. So I said to the township supervisor, well, what if they don't want to do that? And he says, well, they have to. I said, have to why? Is it a law that we have to follow? Well, no, it's just kind of a rule that the township makes up. So we have federal laws, we have state laws, thank you. And then we have township rules that we have, you know, like how high you can cut your grass, and you gotta rake your leaves on the third day after it hits the ground. And they have enforcement officers out there that when a leaf hits, they put a stripe on it, and you got 3 days to get it up, or they're gonna fine you $50. What these townships are doing, they are extorting money out of the residents of these towns, because who's gonna fight it if you have to retain a lawyer and you're going into a local court with local lawyers, and you know, it's a self-sustaining business is what it appears to be. By the way, here's the lawsuit. My wife just handed it to me. So here it is. This is the lawsuit. They're saying that there is no lawsuit, and that's kind of a play on words. They're saying that they don't want to put them out of business. What they're saying is, you got to get a land use permit anytime you want to do anything on your property, and pay you $50. If you don't, you're going to get one of these. That's basically what they're saying, because I've had several conversations with the township supervisor and urging him to back away from this. The signature on this is the zoning coordinator, and her name is Lorraine Grabinski. And I was in error. I thought that she was an elected person, and I was urging people in the township, here's your chance, you know, vote her out. But that's not true. She's hired by the supervisor, and the supervisor, Tony Barnes, is the one that's overseeing this whole thing. And he's not backing down. He's not going to back down. These people are going to be required to get a permit to have a plant sale on their property, or they're going to be sued and put out of business.
Is Big Tony elected?
Big Tony is elected, and some local people here call him Big Tony because the township is sort of like a syndicate, you know, like you know, in New York City. If you want to do business, you got to pay us first. You know, that's kind of how this is working out. If you look at the Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, and Tony doesn't like this. He doesn't like when I talk about the Fifth Amendment. It says your life, liberty, and property is protected under due process of law, right? Your property is also your process. So if your process is you like to read the newspaper out on the front stoop Unless there's a law that says you can't do that, you can read your newspaper out on the front stoop. They don't call it stoop around here, that's a back east term, but if you like to sit out there in your skivvies and do that, you can, unless there's a law, remember a law, it has to be, go through the legislature and be signed into law by the governor, or go through the federal deal and be signed into law by the president. Those are laws. You know, townships don't make laws, counties don't make laws. They make rules, right? Unless there's a law, you can do it. You know, you may have somebody complain and say, you can't do it because we say so, but that's when you fall back on the Constitution. Your Constitution is actually your freedom teeth, that you can take a bite out of these people that want to tell you, you can do it so long as we say so, right? The counties have a problem right now, big problem. The Second Amendment says that our right to own and bear, we have, U.S. citizens have the right to own and bear arms. No, it says the rights of the citizens to own and bear arms shall not be infringed. But then we have the county stepping in and saying, so long as we say it's okay. And that's through the Sheriff's Association, and that's totally incorrect, totally unconstitutional, and I would bet unlawful, I would bet. No one's pressed that issue yet, though. But I guess that's what we're doing here, is we are pressing this issue. Is this enforceable? Does this township have what it takes to enforce this on these people? If not, that's very interesting. It's very interesting. So we're going to see. All right. Now, we're going to take questions on this. I see we have not that many people here. I did put this up, but apparently people have not responded to it. You all could, maybe this is the wrong platform for it. You don't want to talk about this type of thing. But what I would bring to your attention is this could be you. So your involvement in this and a swift end to this could protect you. I mean, you don't need to be the one in gun sights of the township at this point. There's a couple things that we are urging people to do. Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, that's a federal organization, or it's a national organization, and it's a fund. And these people have paid into it for 5 years. So they are going to be represented by high-end lawyers, and that's going to be paid for by Farm to Consumer. At least they've committed to some of it. We don't know how far that's going to go. The other thing is the Michigan Small Farms Council. That is a statewide organization. It's run by some good people. I have some friends over there, and I would recommend that you go to their website, Michigan Small Farms Council, and put your name there, right? Because when we go up against these, the township is a very small group of people, right? It's Tony, and he works with, there's 6 women there. And by the way, Tony's under a lot of pressure. He told me because he's working with, 6 women. It's just him and 6 women. So I understand that he made a comment the other day, and he called me a lunatic, crazy person, or crazy man. Tone, what was it? Chime in here.
Lunatic crazy man.
Lunatic
because that's
crazy
Jim's
man?
favorite name for you now.
Who's?
Jim.
Jim? Okay. My son. Now, first of all, I think that's way out of line, because just because I'm a lunatic and you're going to hold it against me, that's wrong. And I mean, my feelings are hurt, actually. But making fun of my mental status, being crazy, man, I was born this way, right? So that's kind of a slam against me and every other crazy person that I'm dealing with here. And most of the farmers are a little that way. So I take issue with that. But I would urge everyone who is getting down on Tony about that to give him a break. He's under a lot of pressure. He told me that he works with 6 women in that office, and some days it's a nightmare. All right, so cut him some slack, because I am. All right, so on with the show. put your name on that Michigan Small Farms Council, because the numbers there mean something. Those are all people who are concerned about small farms. And there is a donate button there, and we're gonna pull the trigger on this at the end of the week, but we wanna build the coffers there at the Small Farms Conference. Because what we would like to do is we'd like to have this so that farm to consumer doesn't have to bear the brunt of this. And this is our responsibility here in Michigan. And I would like to be able to have a redundancy factor here. Like in farms, we always preach, well, in aviation too, well, military, we always preach redundancy. Like, if I don't want my pants to fall down, I wear a belt. If I'm thinking my belt might fail, then I'm gonna wear suspenders too. Well, we got farm to consumer. They're great, and they were a big help to me. If you guys don't know, I went through something like this with the state, and farm to consumer was very, very helpful. But then, locally, we raised a ton of money, and we were able to knock down a lot of the lawyers' fees and depositions and all those things. So we didn't realize it at the time, but we were attacking it from two different directions, and that was really good. See, the township has a tremendous advantage over the citizens that live in that town, and that's totally incorrect. They collect your taxes, right? They keep some of those taxes at the township, just in case they might want to sue one of you peasants, right? And they get their paychecks first out of it, and then the rest of it is passed on to the state, and then it's passed on to the federal government. So Lorraine didn't have to dig into her pocket to retain a lawyer to try and shut down Crystal's operation. She had all of the dollars from everybody else in the township to utilize those dollars. So instead of showing restraint and saying, hey, how can we get this fixed? You know, if the neighbor has a problem with parking, what can you guys do to fix this so he doesn't have a problem with that anymore? Oh, 18 acres, we'll dedicate a half an acre. We'll gravel it and the cars can park there. Fixed. No, they went right for the jugular and sued, right? Because that's what they do. Why did they do that? Because they can. That's why they do it. And the type of people that gravitate towards those positions generally are not people who are productive, entrepreneurial types, and they want to pretty much tell other people what to do. And, you know, they're bureaucrats. They get their paycheck and they go home. So I think this is incorrect, and Tony straightened me out on that too. He said they are not parasites, people that work for the township. They're not parasites. And I should have asked him, okay, what do you produce if you're not a parasite? What do you produce? I know what I produce here, and I got to give some of it to the township. What do they give me for the taxes that I give them? What do they give me? Now my township's pretty cool. They meet like the second Wednesday of the month or something like that, and you know, they knock it out pretty quick. They're very part-time and they don't get paid very much, and they probably handle some business that we would like them to handle. But this township down here, this is something different. They've got a supervisor, they've got a deputy supervisor, they've got a treasurer, a deputy treasurer, and a deputy to the deputy, and there's a lot of people working down there, and they're all grabbing paychecks. And the question I would have is, what are they providing for the township people? What do they provide? Are they, you know, if it's a safety issue, are they handing out yellow vests? I wonder if Tony, as the supervisor, he supervises Lorraine. I wonder if he requires that she wear a yellow vest while she's in the office, or that he requires everybody in the office wear a helmet in case they fall down the stairs. You know, it's a two-story building, a person can fall down the stairs. And elbow pads too. He should, because it's safety, and he's a safety guy. He's concerned with safety. That's what this is all about. That's what he's telling us. No, if you go down that road, I mean, everything can be safety. And that, actually, if you look at the riots going on in France, the yellow vest riots, you know what that's about? It's because if you drive in France, you're required to have 2 yellow vests in your car for safety. Where does that end? Are we going to make everybody wear a helmet if they're driving around in France? Well, people had enough of it, and I think that's what's happening here is people have had enough of this, you know what. So I've ranted for long enough, but this really gets under my skin. I had another call from a guy yesterday, and it's almost an identical thing. He's got some township down in southern Michigan, and he's getting called from enforcement officers that are telling him he's got this many days to do this, or they're gonna go in and they're gonna take all his animals on the spot. Now, they can't do that, but the guy has there's no reference point. Who do you ask about this, you know? And I told him, okay, his step one, I got a little information on him. He had been in the Army. I said, well, you took an oath to protect and defend a document. Remember that? He says, yeah. I said, get that document. The Constitution? Yeah, Bill of Rights. Get the Bill of Rights. It's 10 short paragraphs. And post that someplace where you're gonna be, right? Like maybe right above the TP in the bathroom. And start reading that, or fold it up and use it as a bookmark in something that you're going to read, or leave it next to your nightstand or on the kitchen table, someplace where you're going to be so you can review that and start to think constitutionally. You know, the First Amendment. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm using my First Amendment. I have the right to free speech. If we were in Bolivia, Tony would be calling the sheriff and having me picked up tonight and put against the wall because I'm speaking out against. Speaking of First Amendment rights, speaking of freedom of speech, they have a township Facebook page, right? And that's where you can go and make comments. Not anymore, you can't, because they took it down. They did not want your comments there. They're going to filter what they tell you the township is doing. That's not right. That's not right. And so this type of thing that we're doing, we're using this platform, this is extremely effective. We're going into a lot of homes and telling them what we see the truth is. If you do not think what I'm saying is the truth, why don't you call down to the township and say, well, let me hear your rendition of it. And then pick your way through it and see if you're with us or you're going to be with them. And that's all I can say. I mean, there have been people that have kind of chimed in that, well, you know, if we don't have zoning, we're going to have people raising pigs in junk cars out in their front yard. Well, there is a downside to freedom, that's for sure. While we're on this subject, I had a very interesting life experience, right? I was in the service, I was in the Air Force, and I was in for 20 years. At one point in my career, I was a supervisor, and I had a young man come to work for me, and he showed up with shiny shoes and nice crisp uniform on, and he was all proud of himself. He's showing up to I was a staff sergeant at the time, and he wanted to impress me, and he sits down across from my desk, and I said, so, Airman Malkoff, where are you from? And he says, Moscow. And he said, really, Moscow? Is that in Indiana? And this kid's scared to death, and he says, no, it's in Russia. I said, you're from Russia? And we were in the ICBM, nuclear ICBM business, and he was coming to work for me, and he's got to have access to ICBMs. And I said, really? But he had a clearance, and the Air Force had made sure that he was the right kind of guy. He had defected to our country through Poland. Very interesting guy. And at that point, I knew very little of what communism or socialism was. I just knew that it was not good. So I used to ask him what it was like to live in Russia as opposed to living in the United States. And one of the things that stuck with me all these years, this is 20 years ago, he says, if you want to go on a holiday, so you want to go on a trip, you have to apply. because you're going to go through checkpoints as you're driving, probably not your car, it would be probably a car that several people would own, and you're going to go through checkpoints, and if you do not have permission to go through those checkpoints, you can't go through. So you have to saying whether it's legitimate that you're going to go on holiday. They don't like you, you don't go. Oh, really? What else? And he was thrilled here. If he wanted to drive 300 miles in a day, he could just get in his car and go, make a decision and go. That's America compared to Soviet Union. You have to get permission there for everything you do. Another thing he told me was, if you want to have a garden in your backyard, you have to apply for it. And it may be a year before you hear back from the township people. And you don't just apply like, I want to have a garden. You say, I want to have a garden that will have 3 rows of turnips, 2 rows of corn, and 1 row of zucchini, right? And if you deviate from that plan that you've given them, then you will get a violation and you will be fined for that. But just to apply, you have to pay for a permission from the township to do that, right? That's the Soviet Union, but this is the United States. So we're going down the wrong road here with this township business and this this permission process for every freaking thing that you want to do. We're going down the wrong road with this. And we're not the ones that are putting that in place. Us citizens are not putting that in place. And it's directly repugnant to the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So it is not enforceable other than if they coerce you with a lawsuit. And they have the dollars to do it. You do not, generally, to go and retain a lawyer is between $2,500 and $5,000. And they don't like to go up against the township because they like to work with the township, generally. You have to find somebody from kind of outside. And that's a scam in itself because the only lawyers you can get are the ones that are licensed in the state. And so they're kind of beholden to the company too. So there's a real problem with this thing. And we have to say, we can sit there and say somebody should fix this, or we can fix it. And we can say, no, I don't think this is right, and resist this until they fix it. And if they won't fix it, the good thing is Tony Barnes can go find another job, right? If you guys vote him out and vote in somebody who is a Connie, a constitutionalist, that is going to make sure that the township rules and regulations, which there is a good reason for rules and regulations, sure. I mean, we got to live together, right? But they have to be consistent with the U.S. Constitution, or they are null and void. And Tony called me, oh, you're a sovereign citizen, right? But I don't know about that. I'm a constitutionalist, and furthermore, so are you. You took an oath to protect and defend, and you're not doing that right now. So, enough ranting from me. I've told you about Malkoff and Soviet Union and our great country, the United States, where we are free. But we're not going to have that freedom if we don't push back on some of these things, because they encroach further and further and further. And after a while, you know, you're going to be asking the township for permission to own a dog or to have another child, and if you think it's not like that, it is in communist and socialist countries. Without a doubt, it's like that. Look at Venezuela right now. All right, so enough. Farm to consumer. Michigan Small Farms Council. If you guys that are wealthy individuals, donate a couple $100,000 to the Small Farms Council, because then we have gunpowder to put in our cannons against these guys. If they know how powerful we are, they will back down on this stuff, because the Dalton Township and the Dalton Township supervisor and the zoning person, they're famous right now over this. They've become famous. I am told by intelligence service that I go by that there will come a time in our country where these folks will not be able to walk down the street, because we all know what they're about. This is sort of a strong arm situation where they're making rules that benefit them. And where's all that? Where do those dollars go? Do those dollars go back into the people, or are they just taken and absorbed into salaries and things like that. I don't know. There's some FOIA requests that are going in right now. Freedom of Information Act. Anything that these guys do, any email that they, anything they look at on Facebook, anything like that, we can FOIA that. We can say, we want to see that. You're an employee of the people of Dalton Township. You're a public servant. Anything that you do at work, we are privy to. All we have to do is ask for it, and they have to give it to us. So there's some FOIA that's going in. We want to find out what the heck's going on down there and why they're acting the way they are. But let's do some question and answer now, and I will calm down. Yes. Are there any questions? I'm sure Jill has some questions here.
Yep. These were from earlier this week. This guy's, let's see, which one of his? Because he had a bunch of them. Can you do pastured poultry in winter where we have little frost and no snow? He's got a bunch of pastured poultry, so that's the next topic.
All right. We're going to shift gears a little bit, but watch me do this flawlessly. Pastured poultry, I know we got a lot of new people now. Pastured poultry is when we're growing chickens for either meat or egg production out on a field. We have found, and so many people have as well, that to put them in a chicken tractor is a good idea. It's a frame like a cage. Ours have a peaked roof. I referred to them at Hidden Creek Farm. No floor in it. And so we have a number of chickens in there. We do feed them, but we have them out on grass or pasture. And we can move that frame every day or every 2 days to keep them off of their own manure and to keep too much manure from building up on the pasture. Their manure is really good fertilizer, so it contributes to the health of that field, but too much of it would be too much of a good thing. So if you're in a place where it's cold, and it depends how cold, if it's with the chickens that we raise Cornish crosses and Freedom Rangers. I prefer the Freedom Rangers. They seem to be a hardier bird. They are more susceptible to death or sickness by heat than they are by cold, so long as they are feathered out. And they usually will feather out in 3 or sometimes 4 weeks. You know, it depends. You know, there's some variances there. And you'll still see some patches on them where there's no feathers, but that's okay. But they just need to be the majority of their bodies need to be feathered out, and then they're good to go in cold weather. I don't think. Well, yeah, I think now it gets pretty darn cold here, and we used to start them in the wintertime when we have a clear span building. It is not heated, and we ran chickens in there when it was cold in the wintertime. Cold. We had to heat their drinkers so their water would stay open. So, you know, they can tolerate the cold for sure. The heat's a problem. So I would say, if you had to do it, yeah, I would say do it, you know, a load at a time. Start, I don't know where you live, but let's say October, you'd be fine. November, and just keep going and see where it gets to be like too cold out, because you do have to water them. And putting young birds out in that, of course, there's no pasture during that time. It's all brown, but I think you could. That's my best guess. Well, educated guess. Next question?
Yes. This one is from Harrison.
Harrison.
I raise Mangalitsa in South Georgia. Is there a chance of overheating?
Yeah. Okay. The guy's name is Harrison. I
Right.
thought you were talking Harrison, Michigan. Yeah, Mangalitzas, they're hairy, right? And it's a different kind of hair than you think. There's 2 hairs there. One's a guard hair, and that's for protection. And it actually provides them protection from the sun, so they don't sunburn like, say, white pigs do, or even white and black pigs like a Hampshire. They'll sunburn too on the white sections. But the under fur is the insulation fur. That's what keeps them warm, and it also helps them to stay cool. But it's only going to be good up to a point. Now, I do know of a guy that was raising them, Mangalitsa pigs in Florida, and he did have some problems with growth because of the heat and the humidity and all that. And so I'm sure the pigs were just hot. And what he did was just made sure he provided them with a lot of shade and then a place to get in mud, a wallow it's called. And they were fine. He didn't have any problems after he did that. So Georgia, if a guy can do it in Florida, I think a guy could do it in Georgia. Yeah, you can do it. Next question.
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted. Oh, you answered that one already. All right.
Take that.
I'm crazy about pastured poultry with Cornish cross. From 3 weeks out onto pasture, I got that covered. My concern is from day old. He's got 1,000 chicks. Besides temperature, feed, biosecurity, and all that, what do I give them as supplement for health and prevention? Will probiotics work?
All right, yeah. So you're talking brooding. All right, here's what I know about brooding that seems to be critical. Is temperature is critical in brooding. If they are too warm, they will spread out way too far away from your heat source, and they will not stay warm enough, right? If you're too cool, then they will clump up, and they'll even climb on top of each other because there's heat coming off that pile, and then they'll suffocate each other. So one of the best things that you can do is purchase these poultry hovers, is what they call them. And it's this semi-cone shaped, looks like a flying saucer, and then it has a heat nozzle inside. You run it off propane or natural gas, and it's got a thermostat out here. And you can set it for the temperature that you want. Now, when you first get your chicks, day old, they like it to be about 95 degrees. That seems to be perfect. So if you have one of those, I got a Ryobi laser pointer heat gun. So wherever that laser is pointing, I can figure out what the temperature is right there. So I will turn that up to the appropriate dial setting to where I've got 95 degrees underneath that hover. And there's enough room under that hover for them to get under it. Then as the days go by, when you get up to day 5, 90 seems to be fine for them. They will sit under there if it's 90. And as you keep going, day 10, 85 seems to be good. So you're backing it off all the time. Now, what I do is, you can go and see my videos on that, and they should be under pastured poultry on Facebook, YouTube here. And you'll see the house that I use, the brooder house. It's probably 10 by 12. It's got a peaked roof on it. I've got it insulated to whatever. I don't remember what I insulated it to. The insulation is not accessible by the birds. It's not accessible to the birds. So it's sandwiched in between steel and plywood. We did some painting on it. We tried to make it look good. And it has no floor in it. So I can bed the floor with dry wood chips, bone dry. And then the hover's in there, and I can heat that place up. Even in the dead of winter, I can heat it up to 95 degrees. So if I needed to start chicks really early, which I don't anymore because I'm a homestead, I only need to grow, for my family, we only need 200 a year. That's 2 chickens a week. Um, that's what we go through. Wouldn't you say about 2 chickens a week? Our family, 2 good-sized chickens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then barbecues in the summer. So maybe like 250, 250 chickens. And then, what I sell to my friends and share or do trading with friends. We grow maybe 750,000 chickens, but we used to do 15,000. So it's kind of easy now. It's just, but this brooder house that I have, um, the chicks are on dirt, right? Or they're on the field, they're on pasture. And so they will start picking in that dirt and they will get pieces of grass, even if it's in the wintertime. They'll get pieces of grass off there. And in the soil, there's a lot that they need. So one of the reasons why chickens stay so healthy out on pastures because they have access to the soil and all the microbes that's in the soil. And as you're doing your pastured poultry, your soil is just going to bloom. It's going to become far more healthy than it ever was. But in the meantime, in order to keep your chicks healthy, I hope you're doing some composting on your homestead. If you're not, you should. And if you haven't yet, get some compost. You can buy it. I wouldn't want to buy it, but you can buy it and you can actually put it out there for your chicks to get. And they'll pick at it, they'll take it. Another thing that we do, yeah, I see the thumbs up's going up. There's a product that you should look into. It's called BIOCHAR. If you're from down south, it's BIOCHAR. If you're from Boston, it's BIOCHAR, right? So BIOCHAR, I heard about it in Mother Earth News. It's a magazine. And I made some. And I made it at a time when we were doing chicks commercially. So it was probably April, right? So we had chicks in the clear span, and I would just move my chicken tractors in there, and we would put straw bales around them so they were well insulated, and then run the hover in there, and it would keep them warm. And so I had 2 chicken tractors going in there, and we made this biochar, and I had a retort that's called a 50-30 or a 30-50. You can Google that, biochar 50, 55-30, 55-30, that's what it is. So you use a 55-gallon drum with a 30-gallon drum on the inside of it, and you can make biochar with that. And that's a whole different story. But I made this biochar, and we're looking at it, you tap it on something, and it actually has a ring to it. It's got a frequency to it that's kind of makes you want to handle it, and you smell it, and you bite a piece off. It's totally black. It's total carbon. So if you put a piece of 2x4 in there, it comes out in a slightly different form. It's smaller, and it's almost pure carbon. And I threw some into the chicks on one of the chicken tractors that was in there that I was closer to, because our clear span building was sort of like our maintenance place. We built stuff in there too. And the chicks went crazy for it. But they'll do that with just about anything that's new. But it was different this time. They ate it. They actually ate it. So I threw another piece in, and they ate that. And I remembered when I was stationed in Japan that they had these huge incinerators that they would make charcoal in, and then they used it on their fields. And these incinerators, when you work night shift, you could smell them, and we were told that that's how they dispose of dead bodies, right? I don't think that's true, but that's what we were told as young GIs. But I remembered that they used a lot of charcoal, so I gave a lot more of that charcoal to the chicks there. When we moved them out several weeks later, when we moved them out onto the field, the ones that we gave the biochar to were significantly bigger, right? So I did more research on that, and what you want to do is make biochar and then take really good compost that's got a lot of bacteria in it, make tea out of it, just like you'd make tea to drink, and then pour that over your biochar, crush it up, and then add it to their feed. And you will eliminate any coccidiosis, and you will be putting a probiotic into them that they can actually use. The problem with the probiotics that you buy is sort of like salt. Their little bodies really can't process much of it. But when the probiotic is in biochar, don't know why, it has to do with the frequency of it, but their little bodies can utilize it big time. Coccidiosis is a protozoa. Coccidia is a protozoa that seeks bacteria to eat. So if you're loading bacteria into their guts, from here to here, the protozoa will use that bacteria, and they'll have a healthy gut system, and the protozoa will not start to attack the chick and make their guts bleed and all that stuff. So there you go. Biochar, and compost. Gotcha.
Brian wondered if you could use for foraging.
Yeah, well, but see, biochar is it is a protector. It's like little apartment buildings with, once you make it, you're making these little apartment complexes, and nobody lives in them. So you want to move all the residents into those apartment buildings. So what you can do is, if you have healthy soils, crush your biochar up and put it out on your soils. You can, because the bacteria will be drawn to it and they'll live in it. The biochars will hold moisture, and they do a lot of other things that I don't know. I mean, I just know it works really well. There's a lot more to everything that we do than we know, and we only like to share it if we think we know. But a lot of times it's cool to say, I think it's valid to say, well, I don't really know why this works, but I can tell you it does work. And here's my seal of approval. Just because I don't know how it works doesn't mean it doesn't work. You know, it does work. And I've read the books where people who are real smart come out and say, this is why it works. And because they have PhD behind their name, I guess we believe them. I don't know. But I can tell you it does work. And my chicks are healthy now, right? They're healthy. But we still grind up biochar and put it in their feed, because we want them to inoculate that biochar as it passes through their gut and put it out the other end. And then it's going right to the ground, right to the field. And we're loading the field with biochar-laden bacteria, because this, we want the field to be alive and to produce. And then our chickens are on that, and they're able to take the produce off there, a lot of the organic material off of there, and a lot of the biomaterial off of there. So, yeah, that's why, we're going to use biochar every place we want to use biochar. We use it on ourselves, we use it in our vegetable garden, we use it every place. I actually make a lot of compost here, like a lot. Probably about 20 or 30 yards a year, because I feed a lot of cows. And in the wintertime, they're in a yard. They don't like to go out in the snow. So they're in a yard, and I scoop up their manure and pile it. And I feed biochar to my cows too. So the bacteria is protected in there. And then when my compost is ready, my big piles are ready, I have a spreader. And I spread it everywhere, on the lawn, in the gardens, in the fields, in the swamps, everywhere I spread it, because it adds to the overall health of, the little Garden of Eden here that I'm charged with taking care of. And it feels right. It feels right.
How about blacksmithing? Blacksmith forging.
Oh, forging! Foraging. I thought you said foraging. Foraging. Oh,
Close.
foraging? Yeah, you sure could. But biochar is really light, and it doesn't have a lot of material in it to burn. So it will go down to ash quicker than coal will. But you do get a lot of heat out of it. I'll tell you what, biochar, you can bring it in the house and burn it, and there's almost no smell. And it does make really nice heat. So yeah, you can do that. And if you're gonna use it for foraging, we actually know about that because we do stuff like that. And we go to Black Iron Days every year here in Michigan, so we know all about it. There's a different way of making biochar for that, and it would not be as clean and free of what they call the distillates that are in the wood, because you don't need it as clean. You're not going to be cooking on it. You're just going to be putting your steel over. But if you're going to do fine knife work, anything that you heat your steel over, your metal, whatever you're using, the elements that are in that fire that you're using do become part of your steel. So if you did, like, let's say for the last several heat treats that you're going to do, I would think that biochar would be really nice because you wouldn't be contaminating the steel. That's just my thought on that. I've not actually done it.
He's been trying to figure out a way to make it in his outdoor wood boiler over the summer.
Huh. Well, I don't think you could do that because true biochar is made in an oxygen-deprived environment. So what we're doing, a retort is different than your outdoor wood burner. A retort is actually an inner chamber and no flame can get in there, and then an outer chamber where the heating element is, and the wood that's in the inner chamber is actually roasted, right? It's not exposed to any flame, and as it's roasted, it gives up the distillates. The distillates being, the methane that's in the wood, and there's all kinds of stuff that's in the wood. And as those distillates come out, they go into the heat chamber where the heating element is, and they catch fire, and then they provide more heat, and we use refractory to push that heat into the inner chamber. I know it sounds kind of complicated, but it's really not. And the flame that's coming off the top of this retort, you can tell what's coming off if you know what each flame is, because we're going to get an orange, going to get a green, and then a blue. It's really neat. We get a little bit of smoke, but it's actually quite clean. I don't think you could make that in an outdoor boiler. It's a different configuration.
How about a closed?
Oh, wait a minute, you could, but you'd have to put another, like, let's say that you took a pressure cooker and filled it with wood, and then you put that in your outside wood boiler and fired it right up. Yeah, when you took that pressure cooker out and broke it open, you'd have biochar in there that was made in an oxygen-deprived environment. So you could. I guess you could.
He said, how about a closed garbage can over a bed of coals?
Yeah, that'll work. The only thing is, the coals need to be. There needs to be enough coals that you're going to get a complete burn, and the garbage can needs to be insulated to make sure that. No, I don't think it would work. No, I don't think it would work. I think what you're going to want to do is research the 5530, and they say that you cannot scale up the 5530. That's wrong. I've scaled it up many times. I have a good one now that makes 250 pounds of biochar per burn, so you can scale it up. And then I got videos on it. Watch the videos.
Soils and biochar playlist. Yep.
Soils and biochar playlist, right on this on this YouTube channel. Is there another question?
Yeah, one last question here.
One last question, and no one has any questions about Hidden Creek?
Nope.
Nope,
I think
okay.
you answered everything.
I guess I did.
This guy, I get tired of picking up apples for my pigs. I get a bucket load every other day, it seemed. So I put a fence around the trees and let the pigs pick them up. They keep it spotless and fertilized. Are there any things I should worry about with this? You know, they talk about pathogens and stuff.
No. Pathogens, no. That's a buzzword for you see, okay, so no, there's nothing for you to worry about, except they're going to dig up, you've already done it, so I assume that you know that pigs, even if they have all the food they want, if there's a place to dig, they're going to dig. They like to dig. That's what that plate on the front of their noses. They like to dig. There's roots down there, and they like roots. So I'm sure you know that by now. I don't want anybody out there to think that if you're going to pasture pigs, that they're not going to dig up your field. They are going to dig up your field. That's what pigs do. Then you have to allow them to do that because that's what they're designed to do. Just like a hummingbird is designed to drink from a hummingbird feeder. Pigs are designed to dig, so they're going to dig, but they might girdle your trees. Girdling is when they need something that's in that bark around the apple trees, and they start to eat that bark off there. And they can go around the tree, and they only have to go around once, and it's not going to grow back. If they go around the tree, and even if there's a consistent line all the way around the tree, and they've gone through that bark, that tree is going to die. I don't know if there's a way you can bridge that gap. Maybe there is that I don't know about, but I actually had an incident where I killed a tree not knowing that. And so that would be something I'd be caution of. This pathogen thing, all right? I'm glad you brought that up because it's the word pathogen to most people is just nebulous enough that it sounds like a rattlesnake, but I don't really know what it is. And when you look it up, can that hurt me? Well, in the right conditions, you know, a shock from 110 outlet, 110 outlet can kill you in the right conditions. But in most conditions, it's just going to be an uncomfortable feeling. In the right conditions, an electric fence can kill you, but most of the time it's just going to be uncomfortable. Pathogens, in the right conditions, yeah, they can kill you. And if they're in the right concentrations, oh yeah, they could kill you. But the conditions have to be right. And the chances of that happening is real slim. I'll tell you where it does happen. It happens when you concentrate animals into a building and you let all of their manure fall through the grates in the floor, and you have like 5,000 animals in there. And so those poor animals are living and breathing over the manure that's fallen through the floor. Yeah, then it can kill you, especially if you're a guy that works in there. Yeah, it can kill you. It can make you sick, and that sickness can lead to death. Oh yeah. Yeah, that can. But that's a very unnatural situation. Very unnatural. But it goes on. That's called factory farming there. That's called concentrated animal feeding operation. CAFO. And that's why you have those really, really stinky places. There's a place here in Michigan, we're driving down the highway. You can't even see the buildings that these animals are in. I don't know what kind of animals they are. But when you go past there with the windows up in the wintertime, you can smell them. You can smell it. That's how bad it is. And they get away with it. I think that's pollution. I don't think that should be allowed. And I think it's a heck of a way to treat animals that are going to nourish your body. I think it's terrible. But pathogens, it seems to be one of those things that they like to throw out there. I know for a while they're saying that you couldn't use animal manures on vegetables, right? Like composted animal manures. And around here they were saying, oh no, you can't do that. You can't even have birds flying in your orchards because pathogens, you know, or, you know, so they certainly wouldn't let you graze pigs in between your apple trees if you were gonna sell them commercially. But if you're just a homesteader, you know what I mean, you can do all that stuff, you don't have to ask anybody. But you're not partnering with anybody that's gonna be looking for some craziness to make you jump through some hoops. I mean, they wanted to make people put deer fences up around their orchards so the deer couldn't get in there and manure because of pathogens. Ooh, pathogens. I don't think they got away with it. And who's pushing that stuff? Yeah. Okay.
I had a couple more for you.
You got a couple more? I'll take it.
I got a couple more, and then I've got a
I'll
hidden
take it, man. I'm
Creek
rolling.
Farm one that
I'm
we'll
rolling.
get through the animal ones and then go back to that one.
All right.
Nate wanted to know, at what age do you slaughter your pigs and how do you put them down?
We slaughter them at all ages, Nate. I have some now that I'm taking in. I'm actually going to be taking into a butcher shop that are sows, and they could be 4 or 5 years old, and they're big girls, and I'm just not needing that many sows anymore, and so I'm going to take them in, and they're going to be fine, but they're big. They're going to be 400 pounds, and we're going to make some really nice products out of them. So, you know, 4 years old, but then sometimes we do roasters, and that would be 100 pounds or less, and they could be 6 months old. So any range, it's just depending on what size animal you either want, or these sows, I no longer need them. I suppose I could sell them as sows, but generally selling a whole animal is not as productive as, man, I load 5 of them in a trailer, take them to my friend that runs a butcher shop. I run a butcher shop too, but that's a lot of work, and I got other stuff going on in the spring. So he does it as a business, and I like to support his business. So if I take 5 pigs to him, he's got work for his employees and stuff, and they do a great job. So we'll get a lot of great products. Now, if I butcher here, I'm glad you asked that question, because if we're doing smaller pigs, 22 long rifle is more than enough. I use a rifle. I do not use a pistol. Rifles are far more accurate, and if you draw a line between the eye and the ear, let's say my ear was up here on a pig, a line to that ear, and then a line from this eye to this ear, right in the middle, right there, and then you just pull it a little to the side, so maybe a 1/4 inch to the side. A 22 long rifle, of course, there's a factor there. Can I use that pen?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say this is the pig's head, this piece of cardboard, right? If I put that bullet at a 90-degree angle, there's a very good chance I'm going to penetrate that skull, right? Like, let's say I want to shoot a windshield with an M16, and the windshield is like at this angle here, that's the average windshield, and I'm standing in front of a vehicle, and they're trying to assault me, and I'm going to fire at that windshield. There's a good chance my bullet could deflect. And I know windshields and pig heads are 2 different things, but it's kind of the same. But if I change where I'm standing and I get a better shot and I'm hitting that windshield on a perpendicular angle, 90 degrees to it, I'm going to drill right through it. It's the same thing with your pig. your pig's standing there on the ground and he's looking at you, and you're standing here, and you're putting it at that angle with a 22 long rifle, you could get a glancing shot. You could. But it would be more like if he's like that and you're down here, then you get a glancing shot. So if you can just get closer and change your angle like that, you're going to put that bullet right through his skull, his frontal plate, and it will just shock his brain. You want to use a hollow point that will go in and it will mushroom. And I've gone back and forth on this, but it'll go in and it'll mushroom and it will shock his brain and he'll just go right down. Now with the bigger pigs, I'm finding out 22 long rifle, I'm not getting the punch that I need to get through that brain. So I actually went to a 22 Magnum, which has about half again as much energy, but it's still a small enough bullet. And you might be saying, why don't you use a 30-06? That'd definitely punch it. Because it will blow, that bullet will go through, and it could go out his cheek here, one side or the other, and the trauma from that is so devastating that that head will be unusable. And, you know, the business we're in, we want to use as much of that animal as possible, and so we want to do as little damage to the head as possible. So then you're saying, well, why don't you hit him with a sledgehammer? Well, if you hit him with a sledgehammer and you don't get a good shot, get a good hit, and he goes running away, now you've got a pig with a lot of adrenaline in his meat. And you don't want that. So, the 22 mag, I think, is the ideal cartridge for this. And I have, since I bought my 22 mag, I got a Ruger American rifle. It's as accurate as any rifle I've ever had, and I'm shooting no more than 12, 15 yards, and the bullets that I get are a hollow point that is a coated hollow point, so it's hollow, but then it's got a cap on it. It's just a green point, and it drops that pig so fast you can't believe it. I did a cow the other week, and it just, all four legs came off the ground, boom, right down, big cow. So that's how I do it.
And when do you butcher? Spring, summer, fall?
Oh, well, if you're gonna butcher at your place, fall is the only way to go, because you want to, for two reasons. First, you don't want a bunch of flies flying around. You don't want that. That's bad, because they can ruin meat really quickly. I mean, in 12 hours you can have a side ruined by flies. And it doesn't take a lot of them either. The other reason is everything we do is seasonal, and our animals are seasonal whether you realize it or not. They are built, they are designed to conserve energy or to build energy when it's spring and summer, because their food supply is readily available. So they store a lot of energy if they build their fat. In the fall, that fat starts to migrate to a place where it can be readily used, and that is the inside of the animal. That's the leaf fat. So it migrates from other places like the back fat into the leaf fat, which is on the inside, and it's a very fine fat, and it's quickly moved to wherever it's needed in their body. So it's moved to the muscles, because the fat is what gives them the energy, and it makes their body stay warmer. So we want to kill it in the fall when the fat is migrating into the muscles, so we have intermuscular fat, because that's where the flavor is, and that's what we need. We need their fat. I mean, I know USDA is telling you, oh, fat-free diet, lean meats and all that stuff. I killed a calf about a month ago, and the meat was so lean, because the calf was only 6 months old, that it was veal. And veal is a turnoff. Without fat, it is no good. It's just, I mean, you can eat it and it would feed you, but when you have steaks in the freezer that have nice intermuscular fat and a fat cap on it, and then you have this lean veal, it's like veal? Who wants veal? You know, you have to camouflage it with all kinds of stuff in order to make it even edible. So that's my thought. You want that intermuscular fat, so that's why you want to kill in the fall. And if you're doing this for homesteading and survivalism, let's say, like I'm a survivalist or a prepper or whatever, and I'm gonna want my body to run at peak performance off of what I'm eating, well, I want a pork chop that's got a lot of intermuscular fat in it, because I need a proper ratio of lean to fat to go in me, because I need the fat. I definitely need the protein, but I need the fat as well, because our brains are fat. A lot of the parts of our bodies, especially women, there's parts on women that are a lot of fat, and we want to keep them well oiled up. So fat is really important. Good quality fat. There again, if it's cheap fat, you might as well be drinking motor oil, because it's just going to go right through you. So if it's cheap fat, that's not good fat. Pastured stuff that's got a lot of chlorophyll in it that the animals will turn into fat, that is the best fat, the most readily available to the human body. And pigs are very compatible with humans, but they have to be fed right. You don't want them eating out of your septic tank and all that stuff, because they will, but you want to be giving them good stuff. And genetically modified corn and soy, that's not good stuff. And hog chow, bad, really bad.
You ready for a new question?
New question, sorry. I'm fired up tonight. Hidden Creek thing really gets me fired up.
Ken wanted to know,
Yes, Ken.
do you fertilize by standard operating procedure or test and then fertilize? Soil test and then fertilize.
Well, both. If you're gonna, like, I'll do a lot of fertilizing and hope it sticks, hope it sticks to the wall. But my fertilizing is just my compost, my biochar. That's my fertilizer. And for, say, like the garden, for the house, we'll pull a soil test on that, send it in, and then, let's say they want us to put lime on it. Okay, we'll put lime on it. Or if they want rock phosphate on it, okay, we'll do it. But say, like, for my turnip field for the pigs, I'm not that careful about that. I do both, but I'm not saying I do it everywhere. Like, I don't, on my hay fields, I don't pull soil samples out there. I just don't, because I get good hay. And maybe someday, when I've mastered everything else, I will start doing soil samples in the fields. But I think you should, if you want to. I'm satisfied with where I'm at as far as that goes at this point. So.
You got this question about Hidden Creek.
Okay, finally.
What happens if Hidden Creek Farm wins? Can they be reimbursed for legal fees and expenses? Does it say anything in the right to farm about them being able to recover costs when they win?
I bet you this is Tony Barnes asking this question. As a matter of fact, the Right to Farm Act is the law that we're referring to when we talk about the Fifth Amendment. Here in the great state of Michigan, we have what's called the Right to Farm Act. Farming being defined as, homesteading. If you want to grow a garden, or you want to have a few chickens in your yard, or even if you want to have some pigs in your yard, there's no reason that cannot be compatible with a residential area. It can. And the township says, oh no, this is zoned farming. Well, that's industrial farming. And they say, this is zoned residential. you can't, I can't have a garden in my residence? Yes, you can. And that is a function of farming. So, the Right to Farm Act came into existence here in the state of Michigan in the year 2000 and was signed into law at that time. So it is law, and the Right to Farm Act says that you have the right to grow proteins and carbohydrates. And it goes one better if you are willing to jump through the hoops and go through a series of generally accepted good agricultural practices that the Department of Agriculture puts out, then your farm becomes MEAP, MEAA, I don't know, Michigan, whatever, certified by the Department of Ag, and that frees you up from nuisance complaints like Hidden Creek is going through by their neighbor and the township. And in the Right to Farm Act, it clearly states that that they will be able to seek lawyers' fees back from the township. And we have a very good friend in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that went through this already. And he taught the township a very expensive lesson. And you were watching Dalton Township just walk right into the same thing, and they will learn an expensive, if people don't lose their jobs. This is so over the top what they're doing that there's even talk right now of recalling some of these elected officials. So, but yeah, they can recoup their lawyers' fees and things like that. So yeah, it's there. Pull it up. Michigan Right to Farm Act. It's not a long act. You can read right through it. It's a wonderful thing. We're very lucky to have it. And it is being amended right now because some of the things in there that weren't quite lining up was, yeah, you can grow stuff in a residential area, but you can't sell it in a residential area. But I think what they really meant was you couldn't have a farmer's market in a residential area, which I kind of get. A farmer's market would be a bunch of farmers convening on a location and selling their wares, say at one person's farm within a residential area. Not good, not good. But the people that live there, they certainly can sell their wares. But that's getting straightened out right now.
The question is, can they be reimbursed for legal fees and expenses
Yes,
when
they
win
can.
their case under Right to Farm?
Under Right to Farm, if they win the case, they can seek those expenses, and it's right there in the Right to Farm. You know, it's not an automatic thing, but nothing is. Right to Farm doesn't mean that the township can't sue them. You can sue anybody for anything, but it's a layer of protection that states the township cannot subvert your right to farm with their zoning or their little rules that they come up with. They can't. Law will supersede ordinance every time. Every time. Let's say you have an ordinance that, you know, the township, Ain't B and Floyd the barber come up with saying, we don't want no redheaded kids in this town. Let's say they do that. There's an ordinance. But that wouldn't line up with a parent's constitutional right for the life of that child to be protected under the Fifth Amendment. Life, liberty, property protected under due process of law. Right? So Ain't B can come up with a, that's funny, Ain't B, Opie was a redheaded kid, wasn't he? They can come up with that, and they can even write it down on some paper, and they can put the township seal on it if they want to. But that doesn't mean if you have a redheaded kid that you have to move to a different township. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's crazy. I know it's a kind of a ridiculous scenario that I'm spinning, but you kind of take the absurdity out way to both sides, and then it becomes clear what they're wanting to do. Like, they're wanting to say, if you have a plant sale where there's gonna be dollars exchanged, then we want a piece of the action. That's what the township in Dalton is saying. And I said to Tony, well, what if I wanna have a graduation? Can people park on the street? Well, the graduation, yeah, that's a one-time thing, plus there's no dollars exchanged. What if they get together and say, hey, we can make some money off all these graduations here? What if they do that? No, we have to stop that.
Brian wanted to know, what can we do differently to get more viewers for this case?
I made a video, and that would be available at the Baker's Green Acres Facebook page. Baker's Green Acres Facebook page. Go on there. I've made 3 of them now. The second one has gotten, I think, 30,000 views. The third one, I think, has 6,000 views, and I just did it yesterday at this time. So if you would get that and share it. The power of sharing a video is unbelievable. And then ask other people to share it. And, you know, hopefully it just goes nationwide, and townships just need to know that there's a boogeyman out there. There is a boogeyman. Who was it that said, when the people, low battery. I think it was, who was that guy that wrote the Constitution? Thomas Jefferson. I think he said, when the people fear government, you have tyranny. But when the government fears the people, you have liberty. And we're in a position right now where you get a knock on the door from some government person, and it's like, uh-oh. I think it needs to be the other way around, that the government person is told to go to so-and-so's residence, and they go, I don't know if I want to go there. There has to be a healthy dose of fear that you might be playing with something that could bite. And I think Dalton Township's going to find out that we bite, and they're going to be bitten. They've already been bitten, and they're going to be bit again.
Did Tony tell you how much money Dalton Township makes or has made from zoning violations?
No. He may have mentioned it, but I don't recall the true number. But we're going to find that out because we FOIA'd that information. We want to know what they took in last year, because we want to come to you and tell you, you know what they took in last year? Because I think that'll fire people up, and then we want to know, what'd you do with that money? They probably are spending it on fluorescent vests and helmets and elbow pads, probably, and steel-toe shoes and safety glasses. Everybody in Dalton Township is required to wear safety glasses. But tinted ones, you can only wear them up until 6 o'clock at night, and then you have to switch over to clear safety glasses. And anybody that's wearing tinted ones past 6 o'clock at night will get a fine, $50, right? And if you want to wear yellow ones, you can apply for a variance. It's going to be $50, right? If you don't want to wear them, $50. No more questions, and I'm getting ganky here, so I'm going to sign off for tonight. If you could, folks, seriously, head over to Baker's Green Acres Facebook page.
And I'm going to repost all those videos tonight.
Yeah.
We'll do that. So they'll
And-
show up on YouTube.
So what?
They'll show up on YouTube.
Okay,
tonight.
well, Jill's going to repost them on YouTube, so they'll be there. And a lot of people don't do Facebook. So they'll be here. All right, you're already here, so they'll be here. Share them, get them out there, you know. And I think that a very valid thing to do here is, you know, trust me, but verify. Call up the Dalton Township office and say, tell me about this, and ask some critical questions, and you know, get to the bottom of it. Now, this may not be going on in your township, but calling your township and say, hey, do you guys see what's going on here in Dalton Township? What are your feelings on that? You know, it might prevent some stuff like this going on in other townships. That, hey, those guys are locked and cocked and ready to go, and you know, if this comes up in another township, there will be people there. Okay, so hey, it's Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. I'm going to sign off. Get me something to eat, and I'll see you next time. Stay tuned for any other information. Thanks.